Hello there, welcome to this tutorial, and this is a tutorial that you'll be learning how to program Python using your phone. Okay, so in our last class we talked about how to work with variables, how to actually program with variables. All right, so we also looked at how to manipulate variables in Python. So today we are just going to conclude what we did about variables in the last class, and we will introduce the input function, all right, and see how you can make use of it with variables. Okay, so we were able to understand that the print function is used to actually output variable. All right, so if you should initialize a variable like x equals to probably a string which which says Python coding. All right, so if we should do that and we want to output this variable, all right, all we just do is to print x, and the x is in parentheses. All right, if you should run that, you will see python python coding displayed there on the output screen. You can see that. Okay, so in the print function you can actually output multiple variables if you separate them by commas. All right, you can output multiple variables by just separating them by commas. All right, so let's create an example here. So we said Python coding, we initiated a variable, and let's also initiate another one, Python coding is, and let's initiate another variable here. Amazing. Okay. Oh, that's not the spelling of amazing. All right, that's amazing there. Okay, so we want to output multiple variables. All right, we want to output all these variables that we've initiated in a single line. All we just do is to come into our print statement or print function and separate each of the variables with a comma. Okay, just go in there and separate them with a comma. X, Y, and Z. Okay, and let's run that and see what's going on. So you can see the Python coding is amazing, isn't it? All right, see how easy that was. So that's quite interesting. This can really be applied when you are building complex program. So having done that, separating these variables with a comma is just one of the ways to do it. Instead of a comma, you can use the plus sign. Okay, you can use the plus sign. So if I come here and replace this with plus, I come here and I replace it with plus. Okay, you will see bring out the same results, but all right, although the spacing is kind of messed up there. Okay, let's try to correct that spacing by including spaces here. Okay, run that again and see. All right, notice where I included the spacing. All right, notice where I included the spacing here, here, and here. So that was able to create spaces in our program, and our text came out properly. Okay, all right. So for numbers, what you should take note is for numbers, this plus operator works as a mathematical, this plus sign works as a mathematical operator, which is the plus. All right. So if I were using an integer here, okay, instead of strings, this will turn out to be an addition operator. Okay, so we actually that's why it's actually best to use the the commas. All right, for instance, let us try something here, and let's introduce another variable xyz. Okay, let's bring in equals, and let's make it an integer. So let's see if we can join them here. It's supposed to give you an error. Let's see that. Okay, you can see they can only catenate string, not int to string. Okay, so that will give you an error, but the moment you use commas, you see is it's actually worked. Okay, so it's advisable to use comma instead of um instead of instead of the addition sign, because it's an operator in Python. All right, okay. I think there are more interesting things to do with variable, and you get to know them when we actually start applying this into to to real life programs that you actually might use probably for certain purposes. Okay, but before we just wrap up with this, um, let's briefly look at the input function. Okay, let's briefly look at the input function. So the input functions takes input from the users and return it. Okay, it takes input from the users and return it. It can be used with variables in such a way that you actually collect input from a user, store it inside a variable, and you return that variable. So let me show explain what I mean here. For instance, you are writing a software that will take in the user's name and will actually return that. Okay, so this is how you initiate an input function. So you come here and you indicate that it's an input. You initiate a variable name and equals to an input, and you bring in parentheses. So here is what is your name. All right, and you close that parenthesis. Okay, so you come here and you print the variable name. Okay, no, there was an error there. That shouldn't be double T, it's one T. Okay, so there comes a prompt. What is your name? And if I say Will, and you see it outputs Will. All right. Okay, so when you are dealing with an input, let's just define some. Let's just explain the syntax of the input function. Um, the the syntax is actually the input and the prompt. What is your name? Here stand for the prompt, and the input indicate that it's an input. Okay, so this prompt is actually optional. It's just a string, as you can see that um, indicates is written to standard output, usually the screen. All right, it just asks it just indicates what you are actually looking for in the input to the user so that the user can understand it. All right, and the input function there returns the value. Okay, so how does the input actually work? So how does the input actually work in Python? The input function reads a line from the input, usually from the user. It converts the line into a string by removing the trailing new line and returns it. All right. Okay. So just before we go deep into input function, I want you guys to go into Play Store and install this. All right. This PyDroid 3. Okay. This actually looks more like the computer interface. So once you install that, this PyDroid 3, okay, you you actually really understand the input function, how it works well. So for instance, okay, for instance, let's actually take some programs here. So we want to write a program that actually collects users input and prints it out. Okay, so let's do that. So we want to get users input. All right, that's a comment there. We talked about that. So we now say input string from the user. Take note of the way I initiated that variable. That is a variable. Recall how the naming conventions for variable. Now that equals input. Okay. Now I'm not going to give a prompt, and I just want you to see how we how the program will run when we go to the output screen. So now I say print. Okay, that's the print statement there. The imputed string is, all right, okay. I now call the variable now input string. Okay, I think we are good to go. Okay, let's go. So you now see a screen that's just making a print. So I just type in Gabi. You can notice the prompt. This cursor is, if you were using a Windows computer, this cursor here will be blinking. It's just indicating a prompt for you to actually type. So if I run that, if I enter Gabi, and they say the imputed string is, oh, okay, I think there's something wrong with that variable there. Let me go and check. It should be Gabi. Okay. I hope you guys noticed the error there. I included the input string inside the string function. Okay. Inside the string function of the print statement. You are not supposed to do that when trying to get a return of your variable in the print statement. So I take that out from the string, the string part of the program, and I write it on its own. Input string. All right. So that should that should output that should output this variable here, input string, input string. Notice the first time I fixed in input string in between this double quotation sign, and that made it a string, and that's why it was displayed on the output screen. So now I'm calling it as a variable for it to be printed out. So let's try that again. That's an invalid syntax there. So there is something that is supposed to separate here. Okay. So all right. So here is our prompt again. So I just type in Gabi. And what did they say? The imputed string is Gabi. All right. If you are using a Windows, this is how the terminal always comes up. All right. So you can actually understand how it really goes when you are actually programming with Python. So now I purposely make sure that I include this part that I'm correcting some minor errors while writing the code, so that some things you must have missed, you easily get it. All right. There are some basic syntax that you make use of while using the input string and print statements, and while manipulating your variable. Okay, so notice that we didn't get a prompt, and that could be a bit confusing for our user. So that's why it's important to actually bring in a prompt here. All right. So let's include a prompt there in form of a string. Okay. So the prompt will ask the user input any string. All right. Let's see how that comes up. You can see now there's a prompt there asking the user to input a string. So if the user now types in Gabi, all right, you now say the imputed string is Gabi. All right. But if you notice there was no space in there, so let's make it a little bit better and create some space there so that the user can see, can be able to differentiate the words from the codes, from what he or she is typing in. Okay, so now, now you can see that there is space there, so we can just type in Gabi, and there it goes. Hope you are just getting the whole idea of how the input works here. So you can use it to actually get anything from the user. You can say, input, instead of input string here, you can just say what is your name. Okay, so on the screen you see what is your name. All right, and you can also input, you can also create another variable, say age. And you say that equals to, you want an input from the user, and you are asking the user how old are you. All right, so now the print could be hello, welcome, okay. Then you can type you your age is okay. So your age is what's the age? What's the age? What's the variable for the age? Okay, give me a comma. So there it goes. What is your name? I can call that okay, Gabi. All right. How old are you? I can call that 18. Oh, that was 118. Hello, welcome, Gabi. Your age is 18. All right. And this is a very useful thing to know about Python programming. You can actually collect users information and get it displayed to wherever you want to be, where it has to be displayed to. Collect it, store it, and actually display it. All right. So that's basically the usefulness of the input function, and I think we we are going to stop here, and you can actually try to write a program that, all right, gets the name, the class, and the age of a student and print it out. All right, try that, and if you have any difficulty to do that, you can ask questions in the class. I will be very happy to respond to you. Thank you. See you in the next tutorial.